I mean, just look at the back
Yep.
of just about anything, and there's some kind of oil in there, some kind of vegetable oil, and then there's typically corn syrup, high fructose
Yep.
corn syrup, and a lot of things too. So, do you mind maybe just with your expertise talking about those two things, vegetable oils and corn syrup, and just like why do they put them in there, and why are they so bad? And I don't know if you know why they put them in there, but they
I,
seem to be
I have a
in
pretty
just
good
about
idea.
everything. Okay, let's
So
go there.
let's hit the seed oils or the vegetable oils first of all, because at one point
Okay.
that was a byproduct that they were trying to get rid of, and that's where they came up with margarine to start with. But the seed oils, um, they stay liquid and shelf stable for longer, like they don't go rancid as fast. And one of the reasons is because they're so highly processed. So, uh,
Okay.
but the seed oils, basically any northern climate plant is like the canola or sunflower seeds or those, they have to maintain the oils have to stay liquid at a colder temperature because they're from colder climates, whereas olive oil is from a more equatorial area, right? And it's used to
Sure.
heat, and same with avocados. So their fats solidify if they get too cold. So
Oh,
they're no
okay.
good in salad dressing, for instance. Like if you take olive oil and you put it in the fridge, and olive oil is a healthy oil. Uh, but if you put it in the fridge, it starts getting chunky, like it settles out and kind of solidifies a bit. So imagine if you had that in your Kraft salad dressing and you stuck it in the fridge and then you pulled it out and it was solid. So they don't like that, first of all. The companies don't like that. And I can understand that point. So they like, if they do put olive oil in anything, they like to cut it with vegetable oil pretty heavy so that it won't solidify. Um, but they get the vegetable oil for nothing because it's a byproduct. Some of it is like um, and the other crops that they grow, such as canola or rapeseed, it's they just get such a high production of it that it's dirt cheap. So they want to put it in everything. And what happens is that your cell walls, for instance, are 80% cholesterol. So as you're eating the seed oils, your body has no choice but to build it out of whatever fats it's getting in. So the seed oils is what it gets made of. Your cell walls get made out of, right? Um,
Hmm.
and the other proteins in your body, everything gets contaminated with the seed oil, and it's an inflammatory substance that creates free radicals. So it causes general chronic inflammation,
Mm.
and it has a half-life. It takes a long time for it to get back into your body. And I can't remember if it's 420, so 600 days. I should memorize the number, but there's an extra large number of days that it takes for half of it to leave your body. So that if you have a really seed oil heavy diet, you'll be loaded with it for 3 to 4 years before you get, if you stopped eating all of it entirely and switched to just say olive oil or whatever, it would take a long time to get it out. So you'll be having inflammation problems that entire time. Um, oh, there we
Dan
go.
just said 620. That's even
Yeah,
worse.
620 days of half-life.
Woo.
So yeah, that's the problem with the seed oil, and it just happens to be really cheap, so they want to put it in everything. And what it does is it creates inflammation and leads to weight gain because when you're inflamed, you can't get rid of like inflammation is basically it makes you puffy and you retain fluids and fats and everything else, right? Um, so that can by itself can cause weight gain.
When you said
Um,
free radicals, what do you mean by that? Can you
so
explain
when
that
the
a little
oil
bit?
gets broken down, it I guess you can think of it like if you're lighting a campfire, right?
Hmm.
And you're burning different fuels on this campfire, and you throw certain things on there that cause a lot of smoke and sparks and stuff. That would be how that oil when it's used for energy it burns it throws electrons off and
Okay.
basically cruds up the system and those electrons smash into your DNA and leave holes and that leads to mutations which can lead to illness. So
Gosh.
it causes a lot of damage to your mitochondria and they don't function properly. when they're burning either too many carbs or too much of the wrong kind of fats. So they prefer, you know, it's just like it's the wrong fuel for your car. You can think of it that way. It's like the crappiest. It's like mixing diesel in with your gas and dumping it in your gas car. It's not helpful. Um, the problem is we are trained to like the taste of them now. So because your taste buds adapt to whatever you eat all the time, right? And if you're used to things that have a lot of vegetable oil in them, then you get I wouldn't say crave it, but I actually really like the taste of margarine because that's what I had when I was a kid,
Okay.
and uh, and I kind of miss it, even though it's one
Yeah.
of the worst things you can do for yourself is to slather margarine on everything, but I still miss it. So it's basically getting used to the poison you've been eating, right? Um, in that case, butter's
Well,
pretty good
because
too, though. But
yeah, well, because typically, right, like a lot of these foods also have additional ingredients in them, like
Mhm.
MSG, right, that
Yeah,
actually can cause that. Yeah, it can cause that that craving, right?
yeah.
Ugh,
And
man,
then we haven't even covered
so rough.
the so the high fructose corn syrup. It says it right in there that it's made mostly out of fructose. So that particular sugar gives you the highest insulin spike.
Mm,
So if you get something with high fructose corn syrup in it frequently, then your insulin is spiked all the time, um, which means that you become insulin resistant. And once that starts happening, then your body has to crank out more and more insulin to do the job because the old amount isn't working anymore. So that can lead to prediabetes and diabetes in itself. But because they put so much high fructose corn syrup in things, that uh, gets us adjusted to eating sweeter and sweeter foods. So that
mm,
at a certain point, now you kind of need that extra bit. It's like when I don't remember which podcast I heard that in, but um, imagine you've got a parent that the kids are misbehaving, so she just yells at them a little bit, and then at first they toe the line, but then the next day they're misbehaving, and she has to yell at them a little louder. But she never does, like all she does is yell at them, so the kids don't stop doing it, and then she yells louder and louder, and then eventually the kids don't even know that she's yelling anymore. It's just background noise. So the more sugar you add to your diet, uh, it becomes background noise to have a little bit of sugar. So now you're used
mm,
to eating sweet things, and it
right.
changes the way you perceive food until you reprogram, which is possible to do.
Yeah, that's sometimes like I've been around people before where they literally will say, "Oh yeah, I'm eating healthy," and maybe it's healthy relative to what they have been eating,
Mhm.
but it's still not healthy. It's still not good. It could say, "Hey, instead of eating this high fructose corn syrup thing, I've moved to just eating pizza or whatever." I don't know.
Yeah.
Just it's like almost like you're shifting things, but you're actually not going to the root of it or having a full maybe awareness of what's truly healthy, what's not. And would you say with that high fructose corn syrup, is the reasons for putting it in similar, you think, to the seed oils where it's a something for them to reduce their margin? These company, I feel like that's typically
Yeah.
most
I,
time that's the answer probably to most of
I
these
think
things,
so.
right?
Well, and they've done lots of studies, and the food companies have paid for these studies where they test different puddings, say, to see what kids will pick the most often, what they'll crave the most, like, and they'll use actual children to do the testing, right? So they, parents get paid or however it works, and
Dude,
they'll give the
that's
kid two
messed
samples of the
up.
pudding, and they'll say which one, and the kid will pick, you know, and they keep giving them one with more and more sugar until they hit the bliss point, I think they call it, where it's irresistible, basically. So they've chosen the amounts based on what's going to sell the most product and be the cheapest at the same time. And you can say, well, that's just business. But the thing is that these companies also have no reason to not know the long-term effects on the public. So at the same time, right? They're just going to get their money out while they can. If it takes 30 years to kill you, then it's something that's really hard to trace, right? Um, so
Yeah,
no
and then
harm,
if
no
there is a
foul.
lawsuit, I mean, and that's the thing that really I really it really bugs me and makes me really upset of how these companies are so powerful, they're so big, they're in bed with the government. So
Yep.
then they can get away with this stuff, and then if there is enough social pressure, and I think a lot about the cigarette industry and how there was a movement, there was uh, change, I suppose. But
Hmm.
I don't know if you know this. This is some kind of, I don't remember where I heard this from, but let me know if you've heard this before. But I'm pretty sure that there was many executives during the 80s and the 90s from big tobacco that moved to big food, and that
I had read that somewhere
yeah,
that that's the case. Yeah.
and it doesn't surprise me because it's like the masters of addiction. They
Mhm.
know. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's a really good movie. I need to rewatch. It's called Thank You for Smoking.
I haven't watched that one, no.
Oh my gosh. If anyone's seen that, let us know in the chat. But I remember watching that in high school, I think. And that was around the time when I was in high school, was in I graduated in 2009. I think that was around the time Super Size Me came out. And Super
Yep.
Size Me, I think, had a really big impact socially. Well, we're I would say it did something. I mean, I think the funny thing about it all, and let me know if you agree with this, but it's like we get really upset, we do something, and
Yep.
then it's like a few years later, it's like it gets like worse or more embedded, just in a different way. Like you
Yep.
could say with cigarettes now, it's we have vaping,
Yep.
which you could argue maybe that's just as bad potentially with how that gets into your bloodstream and affects your DNA. I've heard things about that. Uh, so it's almost like these companies, they get caught red-handed and maybe they do have to become accountable, but then they'll just shift over to something else. And I think with food, it's a huge thing, right? Because this is literally what we're putting into our bodies.
Hmm.
This is
It's yeah,
literally
it's what your
what,
body's made out of.
right. But it's so crazy because it's like, what a concept. It's like I mean, it's almost like you're Aristotle saying these truths out there, and people are like, "Oh wow!" But you think about it, like, yeah, duh, like it's what you're putting in your
Yeah.
bodies. But if you're programmed since you were a kid to be addicted to sweets and to candy, things that are bright, things that
Yeah.
are tasty, I get it because I think once you've been addicted to something and you break free of it, you see things differently, right? You see,
Hmm.
and that's where I see food in my personal life where I still struggle is I can see it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm making this knowing choice now to go to the fast food or to do this, this, and this. But I think it's a program thing, right? Like it's something that happens early on, and you're talking about it in your life where sugar became such a ingrained
Yep.
staple, right? But that's wild. So sorry, I went off a little tangent there, but I thought that'd be an important thing to bring up to the audience is that I think a lot of the people that were in big tobacco are in big food.
Yeah. And Danny just confirmed that there. She says that's true. Philip Morris bought out some big food companies. So
Yeah, yeah, and then the you were saying is that they fund a lot of the studies.
yes, the place that the studies take place in is not specifically uh, paid for by the food companies. However, they have access to all those studies, and if they pay for them, they get the results sooner than other people. But the thing is, we can all get a lot of the data, but it doesn't seem to make any difference. Nobody seems to care. Like they just, uh, human nature, I guess, is a funny thing, right? And
Yeah.
like you were talking about how at one time we used to all uh, every movie, every show, every book had smoking in it, and you hope that maybe that'll happen with food, and maybe it will. We'll see what happens. Um, but like you said, maybe we'll just switch to some other addiction of some sort that we haven't thought of yet. Like for instance, our phones.
Oh,
So
I mean, gosh, I mean that's the ultimate one is our phones, I think, for sure.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's like I think human beings as a species, the trajectory changed with the introduction of the smartphone combined with social media. I think that's when we completely started to change as a species. start to move in a different direction with things because
Yeah,
it completely changes how we interact with the world. Yeah, Christy, literally everyone. Yeah. And I think that's what we're starting to find out more and more, right? I talk about porn addiction. I think that's a thing that many people struggle with,
yeah,
especially
and
men,
that's
right?
it's a hidden one too. I'm sure it's highly prevalent.
Highly
So
prevalent, something you don't want to talk about, something that does have
16% of
consequences.
women apparently have a problem with it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that's kind of it's really sad because I think it used to be, I feel like, where it was mainly a
yeah,
thing for men, and now it's starting to become uh, a compulsive habit for women too, right? But I think, like porn, I think on an even bigger scale, I think comparable to phones is food, and especially food that's not good for us, food that's
yeah,
ultra processed, that has, like you said, seed oils in it, corn syrup.
yeah. It
Oh,
has it
man.
has all of the signaling elements uh, cleaned out of it. Like it's been processed so that all the things that would normally give your body the chemical signals that it needs to know that it's got nutrition in it are missing now. So it's easy to overeat it, and your body doesn't really know what to do with some of it. It just it's like
Yeah.
it's unnatural, literally unnatural. So
Yeah, and so it's almost like we're in this time right now in 2025 where it seems like addictions are skyrocketing.
mhm.
Uh, you have basically any kind of addiction through the palm of your hand, through your phone, really. Because when you think about it with food too, right? You've got DoorDash, you've got Grubhub, you got all these apps that are geared towards, hey, I don't even want to go through the effort to get in my car
No,
and to drive somewhere.
and
I'll
you
just
know an
order it on my
interesting thing,
phone.
yeah,
Yeah,
an
go ahead.
interesting thing about those apps and that service is, since I moved away from Kamloops where I had that problem, I just don't use those services because
Yeah.
it's making it too easy for myself. So that would be like an alcoholic living next door to the liquor store. Like you just don't do that, right?
Yeah,
You
or having
move
like an
somewhere
ordering
else.
service.
Yeah,
You could like
exactly.
order alcohol to your house
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
No, I've used that app twice since then, and I just don't let myself use it because it's too handy. Plus, it's really expensive. It's
Super expensive. It's kind of wild. And everything's like gone up because I think initially when it came out, it's like, okay, this is kind of expensive. And now it's
yeah,
like if you just get a meal for two people, it's like $50.
yeah.
If if you're just getting, some fast food or something. I think that's wild. But yeah, I think circling back, I think Danny said something, and guys, thanks to everyone for being on right now. We're live with Tim Evil, and we're having a great conversation, I think. Thanks for being alongside us and listening to us. Uh, this is just unlocking a lot of things that I think about all every day about food. I talk to my girlfriend a lot about this too. She was the first person that ever made a meal for me in my life in beef tallow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's
Hmm.
awesome. She literally lives on a farm. She rents like a tiny little house on a farm, and literally mostly all the food that she gets, that the meat at least, is from local, either the farm
Oh,
she's
yeah.
on or local farmers. And I was just blown away where she fried she made fries. She cut up some organic potatoes and dipped them in beef tallow.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is so tasty. And I don't feel so crappy afterwards eating like a whole food made in the oil of an animal. And I think from my understanding, I think fast food companies used to fry their stuff in beef tallow, if I'm not mistaken, even McDonald's.
I think
Back
they did.
must have been a
Yeah.
long time ago.
So the cost of the of doing that is higher, and the
Yeah.
perception is that it's not healthy, uh, which is the opposite of the case. Like one of my favorite podcasters always says, Look at whatever the government tells you to do with food, and then do the opposite thing, because that'll be the healthy way to go." And and they'll tell you that cooking something in beef tallow is about the worst thing you could do for yourself. You're killing
No
yourself.
kidding. Are you
So.
kidding me? Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, animal
It's
fats
literally,
were off the list for the longest time. They're starting to make a comeback, but
yeah, and isn't that wild too? And maybe that plays into the programming, is that we and that's probably another conversation. I definitely don't want to get political. I don't really talk a lot about political stuff with my, because I just want to make sure there's an open door for
yeah,
everyone, and that definitely could close some doors. But I think most people can agree that our government, Canada, US, any government around the world, typically don't have the best track record with trust.
Yep.
I think whoever's in charge, I just think that, I mean, you can just look at the food pyramid, right? And
Hmm.
how that was so wrong and destructive, and how basically the government can say, the FDA can say, hey, these Fruit Loops are fine, or this, and this are
Yep.
fine. And then 10 years later, we get some study that says this is actually causing A, B, and C, and D. And we have big pharma then is totally at the end of this, the
Hmm.
conveyor belt of just, hey, like let's hand out a prescription for this. Let's give a prescription for this. I think Ozempic's the big thing now. It's like, hey,
Yep.
and I think you did a talk about that too, where I think it can help people for sure. But now it's just being marketed almost as, hey, if you're overweight and you're struggling,
Yep.
go on this, do that. And then there's a study 10 to 15 years later after that saying, well, actually, this prescription causes this, and this. And it seems
Yep.
like it's just this never ending cycle of ultimately, right, addiction to where we're getting hooked on something that is, I would say, geared or not geared, it's messaged as something that's safe,
Hmm.
something that, hey, our stamp of approval is on it. So you're good to go. You can give your kids this, you can eat this. Hey, by the way, it's got a little red 40 in it or
Yeah.
whatever. It's got a little this and it's got some petroleum in there. Hey, there might
Yeah.
be microplastics in your balls, but hey, who
Yeah.
cares, right? Yeah. So sorry,
Yeah.
that was like a little soapboxy, but now time for you to go on your soapbox if you'd like.
Uh,
It's
I
wild.
don't know. There's so much stuff there, and let's just talk about the Ozempic for a second. So
Yeah.
yes, that can help some people, um, and everybody's got to make their own choices about that. Now I think about what would have happened if it would have been so prevalent when I was having my problems, because
Mm,
it's marketed as something that quiets food noise. So what would have happened if it would have been available when I was desperate? I probably would have made myself go to the potentially made myself go to the doctor and got on Ozempic, and maybe that would do the job, maybe it wouldn't. But what it would have done is it would have been, in my opinion, a shortcut.
mm,
So I wouldn't have had to do the inner work in order to get where I'm at. So maybe everybody isn't capable, like everybody's in a different place in their lives. And at that particular time, I was in a place to do that work. I had the resources to find some way to get it done. And maybe another person wouldn't have been able to, and they would have ended up committing suicide. I don't know. But it also at the same time feels like it's absolving a bit of your personal responsibility, because then you don't have to
mm,
do it. Like long term, if you start on the Ozempic path, then you may have just committed a lifelong decision there, because you're not going to be able to quit using it without gaining weight back, and potentially, in my case, getting the food noise back. And I don't know what would happen for sure. Like it's different paths, right? But what may happen, like you pointed out, is that you may find out that 20 years of Ozempic really does something to you that we don't want.
right.
So, whereas I
Yeah.
doubt 20 years of vegetables going to do that to me. So,
Yeah. Or just 20 years of inner work,
yeah.
right? I think that's such a great point, and I think that's something that really clicked with me, I think, with porn addiction was actually doing more work on myself and who I am,
Mhm.
who I wanna be. Uh, a lot of your points too, I think, match up a lot with, the book Atomic Habits,
Oh,
which I'm
yeah.
rereading right now, and something that James Clear, the author, and if you haven't read that book, I recommend it to everybody. I'm rereading it now, I think, for the 3rd time.
Mhm.
It's fantastic, so simple, and straightforward. But one of the things I think he says is to really break behaviors. A, you got to have self awareness. But
Yep.
B, instead of focusing on a goal, focus on your identity first. Like focus
Yep.
on who do you want to be, and start asking yourself if you're still struggling. Like, hey, what would a person, what would habits would a person do if they're not a binge eater anymore, or like what habits would someone do to get to that place? And like you were saying, I think you start to put in those habits and those routines, and over time, those start to become your identity, right? Because I think, as
Yep.
Clear says, every time you make a decision, really, you're making a vote for whoever you want to be, what identity you want to be when you make a decision, right? And that could be like my example was like going to the gas station and ending up walking out sparkling water. Now I still went to the gas station, so that's something, right? But I made that decision to hold off on the impulse. So
Hmm.
now the next time I and this is a true story too. It was pretty recent. I actually had another feeling that I wanted to go to the gas station. I didn't. I just drove past it. I kept
Oh, yeah.
going because I just told myself. I just said, okay, well, what are you gonna do? I mean, last time you walked out with the sparkling water, you gonna go in there and
Hmm.
now get something that's not healthy for you? Is that the person you want to be? And I think those are
Er,
daily questions, right?
yeah. I- Christy says when I quit smoking, the freedom was weird getting used to. So I smoked hardcore for a
Mm,
couple decades. Like we're talking two Canadian packs a day, 25 cigarettes in a pack, like the king sized ones. So
okay.
I had a massive smoking, and you might say I that was that was before all these other things happened. I quit in 2002, but
Good for you.
like Christy says, the freedom was weird getting used to. So when you first quit smoking, you can't even figure out what non-smokers do with their time. Like, what do they do with all their time? They're not
Yeah.
picking up a smoke or anything. Like, it's
Oh.
unbelievable not having to do that, not having to. Well, these days you would have to go outside to smoke, and you'd have to like struggle to find a place at the airport, and all these things are much more difficult than they were back in early 2000s, right? But yeah. Um, So yeah, what do people that aren't hooked on fast food do with their time?
Mm.
That might be that's a bit of a struggle for some people. Like how do you get around the fact that you can't just stop at a gas station and eat whatever you want? Like what do you do? If you can't just pick up a cheap sub from Subway or whatever. And which is really true for me now because I have troubles with wheat. So that's a big no-no for me, the bread. But um it is a mental switch, like you're talking about your identity, right? When you're a smoker, you're a cool smoker. I actually had dreams of smoking for years later, where
Mm.
I would be smoking in the dream and picking up chicks, and even though I was married, like in the dream, you know how it is in a dream, you get to do whatever. Um, so in the dream, I'd be smoking, I'd be the cool guy. There'd be some hot chick there, and that would basically be the entire dream would be just being cool while smoking. So um, that's your identity then as a smoker. Whereas a non-smoker, and that is exactly how I became a non-smoker, was I changed my identity with hypnotism to become a healthy non-smoker. That was literally the statement was I, Tim, am a healthy non-smoker. So
Mm.
changing my identity is what got me away from the smoking. And with the binge eating, I remember reading about identity and that if you want to build a new habit, you need to become the kind of person that does that habit. So say for instance the habit is to get 30 grams of protein in the morning, then I became the kind of person that was just going to do that. And that
Mm.
was my new identity. And I remember thinking to tell myself I'm not the kind of person that's going to stop at the gas station and buy a bag of chips and four chocolate bars. I'm not that kind of person anymore. I'm the kind of person that drives past the gas station and eats his packed lunch, right? I remember thinking
Yeah.
that
That's
because
great.
I probably got it from his book that you're talking about there, the Atomic Habits book. But yeah. So
Well,
yeah, identity, right?
yeah, and it's I think sometimes when I'd hear that stuff in the past, it's almost like you'd be like, "Oh, that's so simple. If it was so simple, everyone would do it." But it's almost like that's the opposite thing. It's like I feel like the most simple things like just people just don't do because they think if it's simple, everyone would do it. So then
Yeah.
it's like they're believing this
Yeah.
false premise, and then you just talk yourself out of just doing simple things, right? I feel
Yeah.
like there's so many good books like Atomic Habits and so many other ones. And what you write about, I try to incorporate in my writing too. It's just simple things. It's
Hmm.
simple habits, but like you said, I think the hard thing that we have as a culture is persistence.
Yeah.
It used to be a thing, I think, probably past generations. Uh, I think there's a shift, and maybe that's too just culturally with where we're at, with how convenient things are, and
Yeah.
like where it's almost like we've been programmed, uh, conditioned to just expect things to happen when we
Yeah.
click a button, or to be satisfied, just right away with something. But
Hmm.
then I think what we often find is there's just some emptiness there.
Yeah.
That just getting what you want when you want it is actually not, sustainable. It's not healthy.
Hmm.
So it seems like it's like this cultural zeitgeist that we have to where, like with food and with just everything, it seems like it's just right in our face. And it's not the good stuff, it's the unhealthy things. And
Yeah.
you have to like opt out of it?
For sure. Y- I don't know if you know Kyle Shepard on here. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I listened to
yeah.
you guys talk,
So
I think, a week or two
yeah,
ago, I think.
and he's big on causing yourself a little bit of friction, like to make yourself grow and become more flexible mentally,
Yeah.
and physically. And if you think about that, like, so we have a society where we're always dodging uncomfortable things on purpose. Like, we go out of our way to avoid anything uncomfortable. We don't want to be too cold or too hot, or, we got air conditioning, we got heaters. Everybody avoids in general being uncomfortable. Yet we know that having a cold plunge tank is good for you. Like, having that
Mhm.
shock of cold is good for you. Um, if we have a relative that we just don't like, they become toxic, so we have to ditch them for sure, instead of maybe facing the fact that we might have something to do with that relationship. Like, maybe we're part of the equation. Uh, and I'm not saying you have to stick it out with every relative by any means. I'm just saying that our tendency nowadays is to think, well, you just run from anything that's too hard, because you don't have to do it, right? You could just ghost them and you're done. Done sucks.